Well, joining us to talk about this and what changes might be in the woods is the tax partner for Dentons, Bruce Bernacchi, and he joins us now. Bruce, thank you very much for joining us. Have I adequately explained the background to that?
Yes, you have, Michael. That's a great summary of the sort of path that we've taken to get here and the lead up to the release of this discussion document by Inland Revenue 2 days ago.
Okay, so the release of the discussion document 2 days ago is presumably, well, Nicola Willis said that was going to come into the budget. It'd be too early now. Oh, it's February. Are you expecting changes in the budget, or is this to go out another financial year?
I think what we understand is that changes will be announced in the budget. I wouldn't expect, given the legislative process that would then have to be gone through, any change in law would probably find its way into a bill that would be issued in August and probably would take effect from the 1st of April 2026. So if there was a change in law, that's sort of the timeline you'd be looking at.
Now, there are a number of businesses in New Zealand that Sanitarium would be one, I guess Best Start, run by the Right Family Foundation, Naitahu, seafood businesses and things like that have charitable status in this country. Is that who Nicholas Willis is talking about, or is she talking about, is that who she's targeting and suggesting that they should lose their charitable status even though they have charitable status?
Well, what they're targeting is any business activity which is undertaken by the charity, which is unrelated, quote unquote. That's a term that would need to be defined. Unrelated to the normal activity of the charity, and also any income that is accumulated and not distributed out for charitable purposes. So anything that is actually clearly used for charitable purposes. And there's a question as to whether that would have to be in the same tax year or, whether you could look over a longer period. That's going to remain exempt, but it's anything that's accumulated in the business that will be subject to income tax. That's the sort of broad proposal that's being mooted in this document.
Now, if I set up a charity, it makes sense for me not to have to rely necessarily upon the vagaries of gifting from individuals or from the state, and to set up a business so that I can create an income stream to then run my charity. Is that still going to be allowed, or is somehow that commercial operation that provides the profit for my charity, is that going to be taxed from now on?
Well, that's and look, to be clear, it is a discussion document. They haven't made their mind up on this, and there's a 24-page document asking for a lot of questions. But again, the thrust of where they seem to be going is taxing accumulated income in unrelated businesses. And look, yes, the fact pattern you lay out would still be permitted, but what could still be subject to tax is anything that you don't actually apply for charitable purposes. So let's say, you set up this business. It makes $100,000, $90,000 of it is actually applied and distributed for charitable purposes. That $90,000 remains tax exempt. But let's say you leave $10,000 in the business to expand or reinvest, etc., then that will be taxed.
I was thinking also of something like Greenpeace, which I think has charitable status and is clearly listen, I'm not getting upset about this, but I'm just pointing out it is clearly a political lobbying organisation designed to change policy. So you'd hardly describe that as a charitable purpose. It's got a political end. There are a number of organisations like that. Family First, Bob McCoskey's outfit, and a whole series of people that, in fact, he was denied charitable status, which is strange because Greenpeace have got it. Will it also look at those issues as well?
No, this is purely a tax review, and it's purely a review of the taxation of business income. The registration as a charity, but which is done by Charity Services, that sits within the Ministry of Business and Innovation Employment, that's a completely separate to Inland Revenue. And the whole issue around whether something is a charity is whether they're advancing education, religion, relief of poverty, etc. They're long-established common law principles of what a charity is. But this document, it's purely focused on if business income derived by a charity should be taxed or not.
Okay, can I give you an example? Sanitarium, which is probably the most famous one in New Zealand. Well, it's Seventh-day Adventist, I think, isn't it? Is that right, Bruce? I think they're charity that runs
look,
there?
I don't have any. I've never sort of looked at the sanitarium situation. It obviously gets
I always look at my
bandied about
Weet-Bix and I go, I should not be eating this on a Saturday. But anyhow, I know. It's something my mother told me a long time ago. You shouldn't be eating that on a Saturday. Anyhow, cut long story short. In that particular case, can I ask, is that the sort of charity that they're looking at where sanitarium is, well, a pretty significant commercial operation? Are they saying, if you make a profit sanitarium this financial year, Bruce, then you've got to apply that profit in that financial year or in the next financial year to all of those charitable purposes? If you don't, we'll tax you.
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly the sort of scenario they're looking at. Yeah.
Now, here we go. You're a tax expert. If I came to you and I was a business and I said, how can I get round this? Would you say, well, wait until the legislation, then we'll look at it? I guess that's what your practical solution would be. But
yeah.
At the same time, do you think charities will reconfigure themselves to fit that so that they can avoid having to pay that tax?
I think it would be pretty difficult based on sort of indication in the discussion document. And, it's all going to be around, are you conducting a business activity unrelated to what the charity's doing? And so, and that looks like they're going to define what is unrelated sort of pretty broadly and looking at what some overseas jurisdictions like Canada do, etc. And really anything that's not undertaken by volunteers, for example, is going to be considered a business activity and potentially unrelated. So unless you're out there, or if you're just out there sort of, soliciting donations, etc., that's not a business activity. But as soon as you're doing anything else that's unrelated to the core sort of charitable mission. So running a hospital would still be fine. I give these examples. Running a school that you charge fees for, that would be, if you're an education charity, that would be fine. But anything else that's not clearly related, it's going to be caught and will be very hard to structure out of. I think the key thing is going to be looking to make sure you actually apply your income for these charitable purposes.
I can see. I can see the problems instantly, I guess, in terms of I want to grow my business so that I can create more charitable returns into the future. But you're saying there's got to be a much more direct link between the profit I might make in one given year and the charitable ends to satisfy this new regime.
And that's one of the concerns. I think, the government has to proceed carefully here. I mean, the charitable sector, as you've outlined, does play an important role in New Zealand. I mean, we do have an extensive welfare state, but, there are gaps in it, and there are a lot of charities out there doing great things. And if you were to take a successful business owned by a charity and sort of artificially force them to distribute out all their income, to gain a tax benefit, whereas they might have, if they were more from a normal commercial perspective, taken the decision to reinvest, then you do risk artificially forcing them into decisions they might not otherwise taken.